So why are Americans such gun nuts? I've heard a number of, especially British people, express their confusion as to why gun control is such a big thing in the United States and why so many people are so opposed to even the slightest control over guns. So I thought I would make this video explaining, particularly to British people, why guns are such a big part of American culture. Part of it is a social artifact of our past. You see, when our European ancestors first came to this land and realized that it was, wide open and available for the taking, but that there were, interlopers living on it, squatters, if you will, that God wanted us to take that land from those people. But we discovered that it was possible to take some of the land by, cheating and defrauding and tricking and sometimes getting people drunk and stuff. But that sometimes some of these squatters just really weren't willing to leave their homes and the homes their ancestors had lived in for thousands of years, just because we wanted our land. So, sometimes we had to murder those people. And there wasn't always an army available to us to murder them for us, so sometimes we just had to do it ourselves, So, especially in border regions, it became important for all families to have weapons available. And then even after the interlopers had, some of them had been killed and others had been moved out to other available spaces, sometimes some of those people would escape and try to come back, and if our European ancestors and then our American ancestors especially, if we found them ambling through the wilderness trying to find food or whatnot, we couldn't let that stand, so we had to be able to murder those people too. During that period of time, our ancestors were hunting for food and using guns to do that. And when we would move into a new area, along the frontier regions, the border regions, there wouldn't be law enforcement. Sometimes for hundreds of miles in any direction. So, surprisingly, these areas that we were filling up by killing the original inhabitants, these areas tended to fill up with cheaters and murderers and stuff. So we had to protect ourselves. It's kind of a mystery why that would happen, but we had to protect ourselves from those people. So like if we were trying to cheat or murder them and they got the upper hand and they were going to cheat or murder us or whatever, then we'd have to use our weapons on them. Another reason that guns are such a big thing is tradition. In America, there is a tradition of electing as our leaders the biggest psychopaths we can find, the biggest liars we can find. We like to have leaders that we know will be willing to do absolutely anything on our behalf. To get our way, we want them to be willing to stop at nothing. We don't want them to have empathy for others or anything like that. So we hire the biggest, worst psychopaths we can find to be our leaders. As long as they're not serial killers, those people we put in prison. One step below serial killers, we want those people to be our leaders. But as a natural result, we're also afraid of them. And, we want to be able to protect ourselves from our leaders because they're a bunch of psychopaths. So we like to have our guns for that reason. And it's also a part of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, because, the framers of our country recognized that we were going to elect a bunch of psychopaths, so they wanted us to be able to defend ourselves from them. And they put the Second Amendment, the right to own and bear arms, into the Constitution. And, anytime, and this is actually a serious point, anytime something in the Constitution is infringed upon, Americans actually do get very nervous about that, because even if it's something, even for people who don't own guns and have no interest in owning guns, if an amendment to the Constitution is infringed upon, it's not something that's actually changed via the process, the constitutional process set out in the Constitution to amend the Constitution, but if it's just ignoring a piece of the Constitution, there are some very important protections in the Constitution that we're not happy to lose, so we actually do get, upset when the laws begin to infringe on the Constitution. But anyway, back to the discussion. So anyway, we want to be able to protect ourselves from our leaders. It is also true, and this is really true, some people do live still in remote regions, that it can take a significant amount of time for law enforcement to get to you if you have a problem. And for those people, having a weapon is a sense of security. America is a big place, and in some places it's still sparsely populated. There's also the fact that Americans like violent TV shows and movies and things like that, and when we're reading a violent book or watching a violent TV show or movie, we tend to identify ourselves with the protagonist. And, like anybody in any country will do, we imagine ourselves out there, being the tough guy. But unfortunately, Americans overall are not the smartest people in the world. So some of us kind of forget that that's fiction and that wasn't really us. So there is a tough guy element to American society. And those people, want to have their guns and stuff so they can live out these fantasies. And that's kind of where, like the guy I was having the debate with about Second American Civil War, that dude just has a fantasy. He has a fantasy of himself getting out and, kicking butts and taking names and becoming master of the universe or something. And owning guns and talking about a revolution is part of that for him. I just hope the guy never does it. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope for you British people, you folks in the UK, you now have a better understanding of why Americans are so gun crazy. Thanks.